Prayer say is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds. We praise Him, we seek His help, and we seek His forgiveness. We turn to Him in every condition because He is the one who created us. He knows us better than we know ourselves, and He understands the pain we hide even from the closest people around us. Blessings and peace be upon the Prophet Muhammad, who taught us how to speak, how to hope, and how to rely upon Allah in times of ease and difficulty. My dear brothers and sisters, words are not just sounds that leave the mouth and disappear into the air. Words carry meaning, intention, and power. The tongue is small, yet its impact is enormous. A single word can lift a broken heart, and a single word can destroy a soul. This is why our faith places so much importance on what we say, how we say it, and why we say it. When we speak words rooted in faith, words connected to the remembrance of Allah, they do not return empty. They bring comfort, clarity, and healing by the permission of Allah. Every one of us goes through pain. Some pains are visible and some are hidden deep inside the chest. There are illnesses of the body and there are illnesses of the heart. There is anxiety, fear, grief, regret, and disappointment. At times, a person may smile on the outside while carrying a storm within. Allah knows all of this. He is Al-Alim, the all-knowing. And because He knows, He provides us with something powerful, His words. When we speak God's healing word, we are not merely repeating phrases, we are connecting our hearts to the Creator of the heavens and the earth. We are reminding ourselves who is truly in control. Healing does not come from the tongue itself, but from Allah alone. However, Allah has made the tongue a means, a door through which mercy can enter the heart. Look at how Allah describes the Qur'an. He tells us that it is a healing and a mercy for the believers. Healing for what? Healing for confusion, healing for despair, healing for hearts that have become heavy with sin or sorrow. When a believer recites the words of Allah, reflects upon them, and believes in their truth, those words begin to work within the soul in ways we cannot fully explain. My brothers and sisters, one of the greatest mistakes we make is speaking negativity over ourselves. We say, I am finished, I will never change, there is no hope for me, my situation is impossible. Do you realize what you are doing when you say such words? You are allowing despair to speak louder than faith. You are forgetting that Allah is capable of changing everything in a single moment. Nothing is difficult for Him. Nothing is beyond His power. Instead, we should train our tongues to speak words of hope, words of trust, and words of reliance upon Allah. Say, Allah is sufficient for me. Say, my Lord is able. Say, this pain will not last forever. Say, Allah's mercy is greater than my problems. These are not empty statements. These are declarations of belief. They remind the heart to stay connected to its Lord even when the situation looks dark. The Prophet taught us beautiful supplications for times of illness and distress. He taught us to ask Allah for cure, to place our hands on the place of pain, and to call upon Allah with humility and certainty. Notice something important here, certainty. When you speak God's healing word, speak it with belief. Do not speak while doubting Allah's power. Speak while knowing that Allah hears you, sees you, and responds in the way that is best for you. Words are not merely sounds that pass through the air and disappear. They are expressions of what lives in the heart. And in the sight of Allah, they carry weight and meaning. A believer understands that speech is an amana, a trust, because every word spoken is recorded and every intention behind it is known to the one who created the tongue. When words are rooted in faith and remembrance of Allah, they are no longer ordinary. They become a means of connection between the servant and the Creator, and through that connection, comfort, strength, and healing begin to flow. Allah has honored the human being with the ability to speak, and He has guided us on how to use this gift in a way that benefits us in this life and the next. The remembrance of Allah is not limited to silent thoughts within the heart. It is meant to be spoken, heard, and repeated. When a person says the name of Allah, when they declare His greatness, when they place their trust in Him through words, those words shape the heart and calm the soul. The tongue influences the heart, and the heart influences actions, which is why faith-based speech has such a deep impact on a believer's life. In moments of hardship, people often feel powerless. Pain, illness, loss, or fear can make a person feel as though they have no control over their circumstances. Yet, Allah has given us something that remains within our control even in the darkest moments: the choice of what we say. When a believer chooses to speak words of remembrance, they are choosing to acknowledge Allah's presence in the situation. Saying Allah is sufficient for me is not simply a phrase, it is an act of surrender. It is a declaration that the heart still trusts, even when the mind is struggling to understand. The Qur'an reminds us that hearts find tranquility in the remembrance of Allah. This tranquility is a form of healing. A restless heart becomes calm, a fearful heart becomes reassured, and a heavy heart feels lighter. When the tongue repeatedly mentions Allah, the heart slowly aligns itself with that remembrance. This is why consistent faith-filled speech is so important. It is not about speaking once and expecting everything to change instantly, but about building a habit of turning to Allah with the tongue before turning to despair. There is a profound difference between words spoken out of habit and words spoken with awareness. A believer who understands the power of remembrance speaks consciously, knowing that Allah hears every whisper and every supplication. When pain strikes, such a person does not allow the tongue to complain in a way that leads to ingratitude or hopelessness. Instead, they speak with balance, acknowledging the difficulty while affirming trust in Allah's wisdom and mercy. This balance itself brings healing because it protects the heart from falling into despair. Faith-rooted words also protect a person from the whispers of hopelessness that often accompany hardship. Shaitan seeks to weaken a believer by filling the mind with negative thoughts, but when the tongue is busy with remembrance, there is little room for those whispers to settle. Words like, "My Lord is near," "Allah knows my struggle," and this is a test, not a punishment, act as shields for the heart. They remind the believer of the bigger picture and prevent temporary pain from becoming permanent despair. The power of such words is not limited to personal healing. When spoken aloud, they influence the environment and the people around us. A household where Allah is frequently remembered feels different from one where negativity dominates conversations. Children who grow up hearing words of gratitude, trust, and reliance on Allah develop a sense of security and hope. Even in times of difficulty, they learn that turning to Allah is the first response, not the last resort. In times of illness, speaking words of faith has a unique effect. When a person says, "My cure is with Allah," it shifts the focus from fear to trust. This does not mean neglecting worldly means, because seeking treatment is also part of faith. Rather, it means recognizing that medicine is a means and Allah is the healer. This recognition brings peace to the heart because the burden of outcome is placed where it belongs, with the Creator, not the creation. Repeated remembrance strengthens patience. When a believer constantly reminds themselves through words that Allah is just, wise, and merciful, they are less likely to question His decree in a way that harms their faith. Instead, they learn to wait with hope. Patience, supported by remembrance, is not passive, it is active trust. It allows a person to endure hardship without losing their connection to Allah. And this connection is one of the greatest forms of healing, even in moments of loneliness. When no one else seems to understand the pain, words of remembrance create companionship. Speaking to Allah, calling upon Him by His beautiful names, and expressing one's fears and hopes through supplication removes the feeling of being alone. The believer realizes that Allah is closer than anyone else, listening attentively, responding in the best way and at the best time. Over time, a person who consistently speaks words rooted in faith begins to notice a change within themselves. Their reactions become calmer, their outlook becomes more hopeful, and their trust in Allah becomes deeper. This transformation is a form of healing that goes beyond the physical. It heals the way a person thinks, feels, and responds to life's challenges. Through faith-filled speech and constant remembrance, the tongue becomes a tool of mercy, and the heart becomes a place where peace can settle even in the midst of trials. The way a person speaks to themselves has a profound impact on the state of their heart and the strength of their faith. Many people underestimate the effect of their own words, assuming that thoughts spoken quietly or casually do not matter. In reality, the tongue often becomes the loudest voice the heart listens to. When that voice is filled with negativity, doubt, and hopelessness, the heart begins to weaken and faith starts to feel heavy. But when that same tongue is trained to speak words of hope, trust, and reliance upon Allah, the heart is strengthened and the spirit becomes resilient. Negativity does not always appear in loud or obvious forms. Sometimes it comes through repeated statements like, "I can't do this anymore," "Nothing will ever change," or "Allah is angry with me." These words slowly shape a person's inner world. Even if they are not spoken aloud, they settle into the heart and create a sense of defeat. Over time, such speech makes hardship feel heavier than it truly is, because the heart begins to believe that there is no way forward. This is how negativity weakens the heart, not by the difficulty itself, but by how the difficulty is interpreted and verbalized. A believer is encouraged to be honest about pain, but honesty does not mean surrendering to despair. There is a difference between expressing hardship and declaring hopelessness. When a person speaks words that deny any possibility of ease, they are unknowingly limiting their own ability to trust Allah's power. Allah is not constrained by circumstances. And when the tongue constantly suggests that a situation is impossible, the heart forgets the one for whom nothing is impossible. Speaking hope, on the other hand, does not require a person to ignore reality. It requires them to view reality through the lens of faith. Saying this is difficult, but Allah is greater than this difficulty, acknowledges the pain while keeping trust intact. Such words give the heart room to breathe. They remind the believer that hardship is part of life, but it is never the end of the story. With Allah, every closed door can be opened, and every broken path can be redirected. Hopeful speech also changes the way a believer responds to trials. When negativity dominates, even small challenges feel overwhelming. The heart becomes fragile, easily shaken by setbacks. But when the tongue speaks hope regularly, the heart becomes stronger and more stable. Setbacks are no longer seen as proof of failure, but as moments of learning and growth. This shift in perspective protects faith from collapsing under pressure. One of the most dangerous forms of negative speech is self-blame that leads to despair. A person may repeatedly remind themselves of their mistakes, sins, or past failures, saying things like, "I am not worthy of Allah's mercy," or "I have gone too far." While accountability is important, hopeless self-condemnation is not from faith. Such words weaken the heart by cutting it off from repentance and mercy. Allah's door remains open as long as a person is alive, and speaking words that deny this reality only pushes the heart further away from healing. Speaking hop. E strengthens faith because it aligns the tongue with what Allah has promised. Allah has promised ease after hardship, forgiveness after repentance, and mercy that outweighs wrath. When a believer repeats these truths through their speech, They are reminding themselves of divine promises rather than temporary emotions. This repetition reinforces trust, especially during moments when emotions feel unstable and overwhelming. The impact of hopeful speech extends beyond the individual. Families, friendships, and communities are shaped by the language that dominates them. When people constantly speak negatively, focusing only on what is wrong, it creates an atmosphere of tension and despair. But when words of hope are common, even in difficult circumstances, they create an environment of resilience. People feel supported, understood, and encouraged to keep going. In this way, hopeful speech becomes a form of collective strength. Children in particular are deeply affected by the words they hear. When they grow up hearing phrases that reflect trust in Allah, patience in difficulty, and hope in the future, these values become part of their emotional foundation. They learn that challenges are not signs of failure, but opportunities to turn to Allah. This early exposure to hopeful language shapes hearts that are stronger and less likely to crumble under pressure later in life. In moments of personal weakness, when faith feels low and the heart feels tired, speaking hope can feel difficult. Yet it is often in these moments that hopeful words are most needed. Even simple phrases like Allah is with me or this pain will pass can interrupt a cycle of negative thinking. These words act like anchors, keeping the heart from drifting too far into despair. Over time, consistently choosing hopeful speech trains the heart to expect goodness from Allah, even when the path ahead is uncle. Our hopeful speech is not about forcing positivity or denying pain. It is about choosing trust over fear and reliance over despair. It allows a believer to remain emotionally honest while spiritually grounded. By replacing negative self-talk with words that reflect faith, the heart gradually regains its strength. This strength does not remove trials, but it enables the believer to face them with patience, dignity, and unwavering trust in Allah's wisdom, and recite Qur'an and supplication. Hold a unique place in the life of a believer because they directly connect the servant to Allah, the source of all healing. When a heart turns to these two with sincerity, it is not simply engaging in ritual, but seeking relief, guidance, and comfort from the one who understands every pain and every fear. Healing through the Qur'an and dua is not limited to physical illness. It reaches the deepest parts of the soul, where wounds are often unseen by others. The Qur'an is the speech of Allah revealed as guidance, mercy, and light. When a believer recites it, listens to it, or reflects upon its meanings, they are allowing divine words to enter their heart. These words are not like any other words. They carry truth, wisdom, and reassurance. A heart burdened by anxiety finds calm when reminded of Allah's control over all affairs. A heart weighed down by guilt finds hope when reminded of Allah's forgiveness. This is how the Qur'an becomes a source of healing, addressing each inner struggle according to the need of the heart. Many people approach the Qur'an only during moments of crisis, yet its healing power is most effective when it becomes a constant companion. Regular recitation builds familiarity, and familiarity builds comfort. When hardship strikes, the verses already stored in the heart rise naturally, offering reassurance and clarity. This is why those who maintain a relationship do why. The Qur'an often finds strength even in the most difficult situations. The words of Allah become a steady presence, not an emergency response. Supplication is another powerful means of healing because it is an act of complete humility. When a believer raises their hands and calls upon Allah, they are admitting their weakness and Allah's strength. This admission itself brings relief. The heart no longer carries the burden of trying to control everything. Instead, it places its worries, fears, and hopes in the care of the most merciful. Dua transforms pain into a conversation with Allah and this conversation softens the heart. One of the greatest comforts in supplication is knowing that Allah listens attentively. He is not distracted, nor is He distant. Every whispered dua, every tearful plea, and every silent request is heard. This awareness brings healing to hearts that feel ignored or misunderstood by people. Even when words fail to come together, Allah understands what the heart is trying to express. This deep sense of being heard reduces loneliness and restores inner peace. The healing found in the Qur'an and dua also lies in how they reshape perspective. A person in pain often focuses on what they have lost or what they fear losing. The Qur'an redirects this focus toward what remains constant: Allah's mercy, wisdom, and promise of reward for patience. Dua allows the believer to ask not only for relief, but for understanding, strength, and closeness to Allah. This shift in focus changes how pain is experienced, making it lighter and more bearable. There are moments when a believer may feel that their dua is not being answered. During such times, faith is tested, yet understanding the nature of Allah's response brings comfort. Allah answers in the way that is best, not always in the way that is expected. Sometimes healing comes immediately, sometimes gradually, sometimes in a form that protects a person from harm they cannot see. Trusting this wisdom is itself a form of healing because it prevents disappointment from turning into resentment. Quran also teaches patience, reminding believers that every trial has a purpose. These reminders strengthen the heart, especially when suffering feels meaningless. Knowing that pain can elevate status, erase sins, and bring a person closer to Allah changes how hardship is perceived. Instead of being seen solely as punishment or loss, it becomes a means of growth and purification. This understanding soothes the heart and gives meaning to struggle. Another aspect of healing through the Qur'an and supplication is the sense of routine and stability they provide. When life feels chaotic, returning to familiar verses and well-known supplications creates a sense of order. This routine grounds the believer, offering a sense of normalcy and control. Even when external circumstances remain unchanged, the internal state becomes more stable and composed. For many, the act of reciting the Qur'an itself has a calming effect. The rhythm, the sound, and the familiarity of the verses slow the mind and relax the body. This calmness is not coincidental. It is a mercy from Allah. When combined with reflection and sincerity, this calmness deepens into tranquility, allowing the heart to rest even in the presence of ongoing challenges. Supplication also encourages hope because it keeps the heart connected to possibility. As long as a believer is making dua, they are acknowledging that change is possible. They are affirming that Allah is able to transform any situation. This hope prevents despair from taking root. It keeps the heart alive and receptive to Allah's mercy, even during long periods of difficulty. Through consistent engagement with the Qur'an and dua, a believer's relationship with Allah grows stronger. This closeness is perhaps the greatest form of healing because it addresses the root of many inner struggles. A heart that feels connected to Allah is less likely to feel empty, lost, or overwhelmed. Even when pain remains, it is accompanied by a sense of purpose and trust. In this way, the Qur'an and supplication do not merely ease suffering, they transform it into a journey of faith, reliance, and inner strength true. Healing is often misunderstood because many people believe it only means the removal of pain, the disappearance of illness, or the sudden end of hardship. In reality, healing in the sight of Allah is far deeper and more comprehensive. It begins with the understanding that Allah alone is the source of all cure, and that whatever He decrees carries wisdom, even when that wisdom is not immediately clear. When a believer truly accepts this, their heart begins to change, and this change itself is a form of healing. Allah reminds us that He is the one who gives life and causes death, who brings ease and allows difficulty, who tests and who relieves. Nothing happens outside His knowledge or permission. When a person is afflicted with illness, loss, or emotional pain, it is not because Allah is unaware or indifferent. Rather, it is part of a divine plan that unfolds with precision and care. Understanding this does not erase the pain, but it gives it meaning, and meaning softens even the heaviest trials. Many people ask why healing does not always come immediately. They pray, they make dua, they turn to Allah with sincerity, yet the hardship remains. In such moments, Allah may be granting a different form of healing. Instead of removing the difficulty, He may be strengthening the heart to endure it. Instead of changing the situation, He may be changing the believer. Patience, when nurtured through faith, becomes a powerful source of inner stability. It prevents anger, resentment, and despair from taking over the heart. Patience is not passive acceptance or silent suffering. It is an active state of trust in Allah. A patient believer continues to pray, continues to hope, and continues to rely on Allah even when answers seem delayed. This form of patience refines the soul. It teaches humility, dependence, and gratitude. Over time, a person may realize that the strength they gained during hardship was something they could not have developed in comfort. Strength itself is a form of healing that often goes unnoticed. A believer who has endured trials with trust in Allah emerges with a deeper sense of resilience. They become less shaken by minor difficulties and more anchored in their faith. This strength allows them to face future challenges with confidence, knowing that Allah supported them before and will do so again. Such inner fortitude is a gift that remains long after the hardship has passed. There are times when a believer looks back at a period of suffering and realizes that it brought them closer to Allah than ease ever did. During hardship, the heart turns to Allah more frequently, supplication becomes more sincere, and reliance becomes more genuine. This closeness is a profound form of healing because it addresses the spiritual emptiness that many people experience even in times of comfort. A heart connected to Allah finds peace regardless of circumstances. Sometimes healing appears in the form of wisdom. Through trials, a believer learns valuable lessons about life priorities and the fleeting nature of worldly things. They learn what truly matters and what can be let go. This clarity protects the heart from attachment to things that cannot bring lasting peace. By realigning priorities, Allah heals the heart from distractions that previously caused restlessness and dissatisfaction. It is also important to recognize that Allah's mercy is not limited to one type of response. He may grant immediate relief to one person and prolong patience to another, and both responses are acts of mercy. Comparing one's journey to someone else's can weaken the heart and lead to unnecessary frustration. Each soul has its own path, and Allah knows exactly what each person needs to grow and return to Him. Strength granted through hardship often becomes a means of helping others. A believer who has experienced pain and learned patience can offer empathy and understanding to those who are struggling. Their words carry sincerity, and their presence offers comfort. In this way, personal hardship becomes a source of communal healing. Allah uses the experiences of His servants to spread mercy and support among people. When healing is delayed, it also teaches reliance on Allah rather than on outcomes. A believer learns to trust Allah not because of what they receive, but because of who Allah is. This level of faith is deeply healing because it frees the heart from constant expectation and disappointment. The believer learns to find peace and surrender, knowing that Allah's plan is always better than their own. Physical healing, when it comes, is a blessing, but spiritual healing sustains a person even when the body remains weak. A heart at peace can endure physical pain with dignity and hope. This balance between body and soul is part of Allah's mercy. He does not always remove pain, but He ensures that the believer is never alone in it. Through patience and strength, Allah prepares His servants for what lies ahead. Every trial leaves behind a trace of growth, a layer of maturity, and a deeper understanding of reliance. This gradual transformation is healing in its truest sense because it molds the believer into someone more conscious of Allah, more compassionate toward others, and more at peace with. The decree of their Lord's speech is one of the most powerful tools Allah has given to human beings. And when it is guided by faith, it becomes a source of healing not only for the one who speaks, but also for those who listen. Kind and faithful words can reach places that medicine, advice, or silence cannot. Many hearts carry pain that is invisible to the eye, and often all they need is a gentle reminder, a sincere prayer, or a compassionate sentence to feel seen and supported. A believer understands that words can either soothe or wound. Harsh speech, criticism, and careless remarks can deepen someone's struggle, especially when they are already vulnerable. On the other hand, kind speech has the ability to ease burdens and restore hope. Saying something as simple as "Allah knows what you are going through" can bring comfort to a heart that feels misunderstood. These words remind a person that they are not alone and that their pain has not gone unnoticed. By the most merciful, faithful speech carries an additional layer of healing because it connects people to Allah. When someone is reminded of Allah's mercy, wisdom, and closeness, their perspective begins to shift. They are no longer facing their difficulty alone. They are facing it with the awareness that Allah is with them. This awareness brings calm and reassurance, even if the situation itself does not immediately change. The Prophet taught the importance of choosing words carefully, especially when dealing with those who are hurting. He showed compassion in his speech, never belittling someone's pain or dismissing their feelings. This example teaches believers that being a source of healing requires sensitivity and understanding. It is not always about offering solutions or explanations, but about offering presence and empathy through gentle words. Kind and faithful speech also strengthens bonds between people. When someone feels supported through words, trust grows. They become more willing to share their struggles and seek help. This openness prevents isolation, which often intensifies pain. In communities where people speak with kindness and faith, individuals feel safer and more connected. This sense of belonging itself is healing, as it reminds people that they are part of something greater than their individual struggles. Sometimes people underestimate the impact of their words because they assume that only grand gestures matter. In reality, small acts of kindness through speech often leave the deepest impressions. A brief message of encouragement, a sincere dua spoken aloud, or a reminder to trust Allah can stay with a person for years. These words may be remembered long after the speaker has forgotten them, continuing to provide comfort during difficult moments. Faithful speech also requires wisdom. Not every situation calls for the same words, and not every heart needs the same reminder. Some people need reassurance, others need patience, and others need hope. A believer who seeks to heal through words must be attentive and thoughtful. Speaking with wisdom ensures that words uplift rather than overwhelm, and guide rather than confuse. There are moments when silence may seem easier than speaking, especially when someone else's pain feels overwhelming. Yet, even in silence, a few kind words can break the weight of loneliness. Saying, "I am here for you," or "I am making dua for you," communicates care and concern. These words do not attempt to fix the problem, but they offer companionship through the struggle. The healing effect of kind speech is not limited to emotional pain. For those facing illness or loss, words of faith can bring strength and patience, reminding someone that Allah is gentle with His servants, or that every hardship carries reward, helps them endure with dignity. Such reminders should be offered with compassion, not judgment, ensuring that they comfort rather than burden the heart. Speaking kindly also benefits the one who speaks. A person who chooses words of mercy and faith develops a softer heart and a stronger connection to Allah. Their speech reflects their inner state, and as they become a source of comfort for others, they themselves feel a sense of purpose and fulfillment. This mutual healing strengthens both individuals and communities. In a world filled with noise, criticism, and negativity, kind and faithful speech stands out as a rare and powerful gift. It has the ability to restore hope, ease pain, and remind people of Allah's presence in their lives. By choosing words carefully and speaking with sincerity, believers can become channels of mercy, using their tongues to spread comfort and healing wherever they go.